For the record, it was produced to us in native format, but the Bates number is MNKT123605550, and this is a PowerPoint. So, Mr. Gillies, I've handed you a PowerPoint entitled Collaborating Against Diversion and Abuse, a Manufacturer's Perspective, and it's dated July 9, 2014. Do you see that, sir?
Yes.
Are you familiar with this PowerPoint?
I believe I've seen at least portions of it.
Okay. And then if you turn to page 24, sir, this is direct assistance to law enforcement.
Yes.
And I think the second arrow is John Gillies, Director of Global Security. So that's a reference to you, sir, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd like to direct your attention to page 21 of this PowerPoint. Okay, well, okay, and you see the first arrow, it says Florida is no longer the epicenter.
Yes.
What does that mean?
My understanding of this is that Florida is no longer the center of whatever they're referring to in the diversion here.
And I believe previously you referenced Florida's lax business practices and the fact that those loopholes were plugged. Is that correct?
Judgment form.
They put policies into place that made it much more difficult to open the businesses up. Yes.
And I believe you previously testified that had a positive effect on the diversion situation in Florida.
It did.
Okay. And so Florida is no longer the epicenter. The next bullet point is trends become even more important. Do you know what that is a reference to?
I'm sorry, I do not.
Okay. The third bullet point is recent DEA distributor conference, Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas, California, Ohio, and Missouri. Do you see that?
I do.
Now, with respect to Florida no longer being an epicenter because it has, I guess, modified or fixed its lax business practices, one of the consequences of that is that activity is going to shift elsewhere. Isn't that correct, sir?
Objection to form.
It could.
Okay. And the places that it could shift to would be Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas, California, Ohio, and Missouri, correct?
I don't know that.
Well, what do you understand the reference to those states to be?
That wasn't actually what I was thinking, so I don't know what that means then.
Okay, well, my apologies. What were you thinking?
I was thinking that that's where DEA distributor conferences were held recently.
Okay. Do you recall going to any conferences in those states?
Not me.
Okay. Now, for the states listed, are you aware of concerns with respect to diversion of opioid products in those states?
Objection to form.
Some of them.
Which ones?
Tennessee and Kentucky.
What about Ohio?
No.
Okay. What about Missouri?
No.
And when you say no, are you indicating that diversion wasn't a problem, or you're just not aware of diversion was a problem?
I was not aware. I thought that's what your question was, and I'm not aware of Missouri having that problem.
Okay. Now, the next bullet point is we look at IMS data to create heat maps. Do you understand what that is a reference to?
Yes.
What is it?
So Mallinckrodt looked at IMS data to look for areas in the country where there were high concentrations of certain products.
Okay. And what would be the significance of that to Mallinckrodt? Well, strike that. What would be the significance of high concentrations of certain products in certain areas be?
Objection to form.
So it would tell us where the products were going. And then as part of our anti-diversion efforts, this was one of the factors that we started to consider.
And so is it fair to say that these heat maps would, well, strike that. Is it fair to say that these heat maps potentially identified areas of increased diversion activity?
Objection to form.
The potential was there.
Okay. And then if you turn to page 22, this I believe this is a heat map, is it not?
That's what it appears to be.
And it's a heat map that's based on oxycodone IR 30 milligrams, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why create a heat map of that product?
It's one of the products that Mallinckrodt sells and was identified to us by the DEA.
And when you say identified to us by the DEA, what do you mean by that?
As having the potential for diversion.
Okay. And I take it the red areas are, I guess, the hotter parts of the heat map? Is that the idea?
Objection to form.
That's my understanding.
And then can you turn to page 23? This is hydrocodone combos, 10 milligram tablets per capita. Why create a heat map for hydrocodone combos? Strike that. Why create a heat map for hydrocodone combos of 10 milligrams?
Again, we sell the product, and DEA identified that to me as a potential problem for diversion.
Did Mallinckrodt direct, or I'll strike that. Did Mallinckrodt pay particular attention to the Oxy 30 product with respect to its anti-diversion efforts?
Objection to form.
Yes.
Did it pay particular attention to the hydrocodone combos 10 milligram product?
Same objection.
Yes.
Were there other products that Mallinckrodt was focused on with respect to anti-diversion efforts?
Objection to form.
I mean, these were the main ones. We might have looked at some others, but these are the two main ones that I recall.
Okay, put that aside. Okay, so this is Gillies Exhibit 44. This is an email chain. It bears the Bates number MNKT1-565-0749. And sir, I'm going to start my questioning with the very bottom email on the back page.
Okay.
Sir, who is Derek Siegel?
He's the executive director of the Ohio HIDA and a former colleague of mine.
And what is the Ohio HIDA?
It's the high-intensity drug trafficking group that Derek was in charge of.
Okay. And when you say high-intensity drug trafficking group, what do you mean by that?
That's a DEA-designated group that pulls law enforcement together to address drug concerns.
And some of these concerns would relate to prescription opioids, would they not?
Could, yes.
Okay. Now, not every state is an HIDTA, is it?
I don't believe every state has its own HIDA. Some are combined HIDAs.
Okay. And within each state, there's a focus on particular counties, is there not?
Objection. I'm going to, on 2E grounds, I'm going to remind the witness to answer only to the extent he can do so based on information he did not obtain through his official business with the FBI.
I don't know that.
Okay. So why were you reaching out to why were you reaching out to the Ohio HIDTA?
Because I was looking for a speaker for our anti-diversion industry working group meeting that was coming up.
Did Mallinckrodt work with the Ohio HIDTA?
No.
Do you know what the factors are for designating an HIDTA?
Same objection as to 2E.
So I don't think I'm going to be able to answer that one then.
Okay. Well, so HIDTA stands for High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, correct?
That's correct.
And this would, in the context of opioids, suggest an increased concern with diversion, would it not?
Objection to form.
This email between me and Derek?
Well, no, not the email. I'm just
I'm
saying
sorry.
the
Okay.
concept of the HIDTA. So sort of taking a step back from this email.
Oh, okay.
The HIDTA stands for a High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area.
Correct.
And in the context of opioids, that would indicate an increased concern with diversion, would it not?
Objection to form.
Well, I don't know if HIDA's addressing that.
Well, but you are asking for an HIDTA guest speaker in connection with your anti-diversion activities, right?
That's correct.
So clearly HIDTA addresses, prescription opioid abuse.
They
Objection
could.
to form.
Okay.
Yes.
And isn't it fair to say that the fact that Ohio has been designated as an HIDTA suggests an increased concern with prescription opioids?
Objection to form.
No. They probably had the HIDA designation previous to that when they were looking at cocaine, heroin, whatever.
Well, would you?
I don't think the HIDA was created just for opioids.
Well, would you agree that Ohio does have a concern with prescription opioid products?
Objection to form.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And that prescription opioids are being diverted in Ohio, are they not?
Yeah, I don't know that.
Okay. Are prescription opioids being abused in Ohio?
Objection to form.
I don't know that either.
So you can put that aside.
Okay.
So this is Exhibit 45. So this is an email chain, and it has Bates numbers MNKT1-789-8862. And I'd like to focus your attention on the emails on the first page.
Okay.
Okay. So in the middle of the page, there's an email from Julie Milford to Jacob Longenecker, CCing Jennifer Boost and Jennifer Turp. Who is Julie Milford?
She was an analyst at Mallinckrodt.
And what analysis did she carry out?
She would run the heat map data for us.
Okay. And in the email above that, Jennifer sends an email to you saying these heat maps are oxycodone specific. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Did you regularly receive these heat maps?
Objection to form.
Defined regularly.
Well, did you receive heat maps for oxycodone?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
As I previously stated, looking for areas in the country where there were pockets of the products going.
Do you know if these heat maps were shared with other members of the SOM team?
Yes.
Okay. And what did Mallinckrodt do with this analysis?
One of the things that we did is we would pull chargeback information and look to see if there were any of our products going to these areas and if there was any cause for concern.
And so I'd like to direct your attention to the PowerPoint that's it's an attachment to this cover email. It was produced to us in native format, though, but the Bates number is MMKT1-789-8864. So I guess the second slide says MNK geographical patterns are similar to the rest of the market.
Okay.
Do you understand what that means?
So I believe that Mallinckrodt's products are going to these areas are similar to the amounts from other manufacturers.
And what is the significance of that finding or that pattern?
Objection to form.
A consistency.
Okay. Well, so let me rephrase that
Okay.
question. Why would one care that, or why would Mallinckrodt care that the geographical patterns, that its geographical patterns, I assume we're talking about distribution patterns. Why would Mallinckrodt care that its geographical distribution patterns were similar to the rest of the market?
Objection to form.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. So the second one is there is a concentration of volume in the Pacific Northwest, and I believe that's a reference to 5 milligrams oxycodone.
That's my
correct?
understanding.
Okay. And what is the significance of that pattern or that finding?
Objection to form.
So we see that there's as I've stated previously, there's a higher concentration of our product going into that area. And then similar, it appears that other manufacturers have a concentration of their product going into the Northwest also.
And so if Mallinckrodt's distribution pattern were to differ from other manufacturers, would that be significant?
Objection to form.
Not necessarily.
Now, you said that you would pull chargeback data based on these heat maps. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So, well, I mean, I guess would this tell you to pull chargeback data for 5 milligram oxy from the Pacific Northwest? Or I'm just trying to understand how these heat maps were used.
Objection to form.
Yes. So we could run chargeback data for any of the pharmacies getting our products, in this case, in the Pacific Northwest, to see whether there were any issues that we might want to further address.
And the next slide is, it says 10 milligram patterns are similar to other strengths. Though for Mallinckrodt, I guess Mallinckrodt doesn't make a 10 milligram product. Is that why the map is blank?
So I'm only familiar with 5, 15, and 30. It doesn't mean that Mallinckrodt didn't make a 10. Might not have sold
Okay.
a lot of that product, though. So I don't want to say that there was no Mallinckrodt 10 MIG, because there might have been.
But it would seem that Mallinckrodt did not make much of it, given this heat map. So
Or didn't sell much.
didn't sell much
yeah.
of it.
Mhm.
Okay. But it's got the 10 milligrams for other manufacturers, and it says 10 milligram patterns are similar to other strengths. Do you know what the significance of that finding is?
Objection to form.
Only that, similar to the 5 MIGs, the areas that are getting the 10 MIGs are similar.
Okay.
And I believe that's what they're referring to here.
Now, why would Mallinckrodt care if it wasn't selling much of the 10 milligrams?
Objection to form.
We were looking at all the products within this area, within the oxycodone 510s, 20s, 30s, 15s, to see if there was any changes in the patterns between the various 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 megs.
And what would I guess what I'm confused about is, so you're looking at all of the different products,
Mm-hmm.
including ones that Mallinckrodt may not sell very much of. How does that information relate to diversion? Why did you care about this as the director or vice president
Sure.
of global security?
Objection to form.
As part of our anti-diversion efforts, we were trying to see if, as I stated previously, if there were areas in the country where there were high concentrations of products being sold, whether the potential for diversion existed.
And so for the next slide, there's a concentration of 15 milligram tablets along the East Coast and parts of the West Coast. So do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And so the way this would have been used would have been to run chargeback data for the areas of concentration in the East Coast and the West Coast?
I would say for those pocket areas where there seemed to be a high concentration.
And so if there were pocket areas in Ohio, that would have also been, that would have also been a focus of chargeback data?
Objection to form.
Could have been.
Now, the next slide is KVK manufactures a large majority of 20 milligram tablets, which are scattered across the nation in a similar pattern to other strengths. Do you know what KVK is?
I believe they're a manufacturer.
And why was Mallinckrodt focused on KVK?
I'm sorry, I do not
Objection to
know.
form.
Now, the next, I guess, section is it's a per capita heat map. Do you understand what the difference is between the per capita heat map and the volume heat map?
I believe I do.
Okay, what is that difference?
So now we're looking at populations in those areas.
And is this, when you say looking at populations, is this the number of individuals consuming oxycodone? Is that what you mean by per capita, or?
Objection to form.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And so what would this per capita heat map tell you that a volume heat map wouldn't?
Volume is showing the volume of product that's going in there, and the per capita is showing you the potentially the number of people that might be utilizing it.
And how would Mallinckrodt have used this data that it gathered from the per capita heat maps?
So as part of our anti-diversion efforts, it's just another pointer for us to look at.
And similar to the volume, would this have been a way to focus the chargeback analysis?
Objection to form.
Looking at all these pointers would permit us to focus in on areas.
Now, if you turn to, I believe it's the third slide in for the per capita heat maps, it says a 10 milligram tablet has normal dispensing patterns compared to other strengths. You see that slide?
Yes.
Do you know what is meant by normal dispensing patterns?
I'm sorry, I do not.
And so you don't know what an abnormal dispensing pattern would be.
Objection to form.
Correct.
Let me put that aside. Okay, could we go off the record really briefly?
Sure. We're going off the record at 10:59 a.m.
So then,
We are back on the record at 11 a.m.
okay, so Mr. Gillies, I'm going to hand you Exhibit 46. As I indicated, this is a document that was produced to us in native format by Mallinckrodt. When we take a break, I will provide the Bates number for it, and I believe it's also been used as an exhibit in other depositions.
Okay.
And it's actually, the PowerPoint has two sections. I'm going to focus your attention on the section entitled National Use of Opioids, Heat Maps of Units through Cash Transactions. That starts on page 7.
Okay.
Now, this is another PowerPoint or another presentation that was another analysis that was prepared by Julie Milford. Mr. Gillies, are you familiar with this PowerPoint?
I am not.
Okay. You don't recall ever seeing it before?
Never.
Okay. Were you aware that she did an analysis on heat maps of units through cash transactions?
Objection to form.
I believe I recall her doing one.
Okay. But you don't recall ever seeing this presentation?
No, I don't believe I've ever seen this one.
Okay. Do you recall seeing a similar presentation on this data?
Objection to form.
No.
Okay. Now, if you turn to page 8, it says methodology. It says the first bullet point is combined all MNS exponent plan track cash prescriptions in the last 2 years by prescribing the physician's 3-digit zip code. Do you understand what that is a reference to, sir?
I mean, other than what it says there, that would be my only understanding of what I'm reading there.
Okay. Now, underneath it, there's a bullet point that says product basket included therapies and strengths known to be highly abused, as well as Exalgo. Do you know how this list was created?
I do not.
Okay. And when it says highly abused, do you know how that determination was made?
I do not.
Would you agree that the products listed underneath this bullet point are highly abused?
Objection to form.
I could only address the ones that I would be aware of.
Okay. And for the, well, which ones are you aware of?
The Hydro 10325s and the Oxy 30s.
Are there any other products that you knew to be highly abused that were not included on this that are not included on this list?
Objection to form.
Those are the two main ones that I was familiar with.
So you weren't familiar with oxycodone 15 as being a highly abused product?
Objection to form.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And other than the 10325 hydro APP and the 30 milligram oxycodone, you weren't aware that any of these other products were highly abused?
Objection to form.
That's right. I'm just not familiar with all of these. So.
Okay. Now, why focus on cash transactions?
Objection to form.
It would be one of the areas that you would look at if a pharmacy was doing a lot of prescriptions for cash.
And that would be an indication of diversion?
Objection to form.
Could be. So again, it's just another one of those pointers that you're looking at. Doesn't mean that it is, but it could be.
And so do you see page 10 of the PowerPoint?
Yes.
It says 4 critical danger spots, 3 of which are in Kentucky near the West Virginia border. Do you see that?
Yes.
Did you have an understanding of that Kentucky and West Virginia were at an increased risk of diversion?
Objection to form.
At which time?
At any time.
Yes.
And what time periods are you referring to, or what time periods are you aware of?
So, my reference for Kentucky would be earlier and West Virginia would be later. So, Kentucky, in that early time frame from joining Mallinckrodt, and West Virginia a few years later.
So Kentucky would have been around 2012?
Yeah, 2012, 2013, 13 time frame, and then West Virginia 2014, 15 time frame.
Now, if you turn to the next page, it's page 11. It says 2 danger zones in Kentucky, just for this one product, and 2 strengths alone. Hotspots near Las Vegas, in Texas, Alaska, and Alabama. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Were you aware of diversion concerns or abuse concerns in Texas, Alaska, or Alabama?
Objection to form.
Texas, Alaska, no. Alabama, approximately in the 2015 time frame.
Then it says none in Florida, but it says California, Texas, Idaho, Oklahoma, and I believe Mississippi also have large portion of warm spots. So I think you just answered regarding Texas. But what about California, Idaho, Oklahoma, or Mississippi?
Objection to form.
No, Idaho, Oklahoma, Mississippi. Knew that there were some high concentration areas in California, but not aware of diversion.
And so when you say high concentration areas, what are you referring to?
I'm referring to the heat map showing that there was pockets within California that hydro products were the primary drug being prescribed.
Did you do anything to investigate those pockets in California?
Objection to form.
We did look at pharmacies in California.
Okay, so turning to page 12. It says many warm and hot spots in Florida, but limited across the rest of the country. Shows geographical differences and potential abuse patterns. Do you know what that means?
I'm not really sure what that's referencing.
Okay. Now notice it says one can also follow the Oxy Express Highway 75 and see all the cool spots that pop up along the highway known to be used by drug seekers traveling for pills, according to the DEA. Are you familiar with the term Oxy Express?
Yes.
And what is the Oxy Express?
Drug seekers along the I-75 corridor.
And the Oxy Express connects all of those states. I mean, it starts in Florida and it goes up, does it not?
Yes.
Check the form.
So turning to page 15. And it says Kentucky critical spot facts. Over 23 million tablets were prescribed since March 2010. My apologies, I'm reading from the PowerPoint. Over 23 million tablets were prescribed since March 2010 in an area with a total population of 3.1 million. Total supply of dispensed tablets is enough to give every person in the population almost 8 tablets. Were you aware of that information?
No.
Okay. 31% of all tablets were paid with cash. Were you aware of that information?
No.
Okay. The top critical zone in the country had 33% of all cash tablets prescribed by one physician. Are you aware of that?
No.
Okay. In general, the prescribing habits of many physicians in the area most likely attract out-of-county drug seekers. So assuming the above bullet points are accurate, would you agree with that conclusion?
Objection to form.
I don't know what this is referencing. Can we blow up the bottom of that? Do you know what it says, or
Do you mean the
the source?
source?
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, can we zoom in on that?
That's it. Okay.
Oh, okay. So I'm reading it into the records. It's source IMS exponent plan track, and then it gives a website.
Okay.
I think the website is to the reference of the physician getting busted.
Okay. So your question?
Yes, so my question is, given this data, that you've got 23 million tablets being prescribed in a population with 3.1 million people, you got 31% of all tablets being paid for with cash, and you've got a top critical zone in the country that had 33% of all cash tablets being prescribed by one physician. Would you agree with the conclusion that, in general, the prescribing habits of many physicians in the area most likely attract out-of-county drug seekers?
Objection to form.
So I don't know that, but the high indication of cash would indicate that people are logically paying cash for their scripts when typically people would use insurance.
Well,
So it's certainly a key indicator.
Okay. And you had previously talked about, so this PowerPoint, I believe, is, so I'm trying to see if there's a date on it. Certainly going to be after 2012, given the data. You had previously indicated that as Florida cracked down on its business practices, you know, the I guess epicenter or the focus moved elsewhere. Wouldn't this be an example of that?
Objection to form.
I mean, I don't know that. So unfortunately, I'm unfamiliar with this document and the exact time frame, March 2010 to what. So I would need to know a little more information, what the exact time frame that this covers, to give you an educated answer on that.
Okay. But you would agree that this data suggests a serious concern with diversion in Kentucky, would it not?
Objection to form.
it's certainly a data point to look at.
Okay, so turning to slide 7 or page 17. The slide is entitled Hotspot and Critical Spot Trends. And the bullet underneath it is, in the nation's hot and critical spots, notable usage shifts recently occurred. Oxycodone HCl tablets decreased in percentage usage, while hydrocodone APP diluted, methadone and oxycodone APAP increased. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. Do you understand what that is a reference to?
I don't.
Okay. But it would stand to reason that if one drug becomes a focus of regulatory attention, demand and consumption is going to shift to other drugs, would it not?
Objection to form.
It could.
Okay, thank you. You can put that aside.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm handing you what's marked as Exhibit 47.
Okay.
This document bears a Bates number, MNKT1 2359481. Mr. Gillies, do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Okay, what is this document?
It's a summary of a meeting I had with DEA in Albany.
Okay. And was it your practice to transcribe your meetings?
Yes.
Did you transcribe all of your meetings or only certain ones?
If there was pertinent information that was discussed.
Okay. And would that have been a general practice, or was it one that you applied only to your meetings with DEA?
Objection to form.
General practice.
Okay. And so, you've worked at Mallinckrodt for 7 years now. Is that correct?
So since June of 2012. Yeah.
So around 7 years. So you must have, hundreds of these memos. Is that fair?
Objection to form.
Bless you. No. I wouldn't necessarily add hundreds of meetings with the DEA.
Well, but you wouldn't just transcribe DEA meetings. You would transcribe any important meetings. Is that fair, or did I misunderstand?
I would have reports of conversations with pharmacies.
Okay. Would you also have memorialized reports of conversations with colleagues that contained important information?
Objection to form.
No, not necessarily.
Okay. So these would have been, reports of conversations with people outside of Mallinckrodt?
Yes.
Okay. So the top paragraph, well, strike that.
Mm-hmm.
So this memorializes or transcribes a meeting you had with DEA Albany. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it's with Susan Baker, Heather White, and Christina Russo?
Correct.
Okay. And number one is, oh, well, actually, can you read number one into the record?
Sure. DEA does not provide guidance on what numbers any company should use as a baseline in its suspicious order monitoring. Baker and White stated that they did not know where Mallinckrodt came up with their numbers as a baseline for oxy, but it was not from DEA. Therefore, they added they would provide no guidance on hydrocodone. It was up to the company to know its customers.
Okay. And you recall this conversation?
Yes.
Okay, and so what is the context of this conversation?
So we learned from DEA that there were the average amount of hydrocodone going into a certain, to the average pharmacy was X. So I was discussing that number with them, and they said DEA doesn't know where it came up with the number, and there is no baseline. I don't know that baseline was mine, but the numbers that we got was from DEA, telling us what the average pharmacy sold as it related to hydrocodone.
And DEA didn't, or at least these DEA employees didn't know where that number came from? Is that the...
That's what they
is that correct?
claimed, yes.
Okay. And how did DEA convey the average number to you? Was it in a phone conversation, email?
So it was in some of their presentations. And I found these numbers out on the internet.
Okay, so you found the presentations containing the numbers on the internet.
That's correct. DEA presentations.
Turning to point 3, the suspicious order monitoring paragraph. Do you recall that part of the conversation?
I do not.
Okay. Then point 4, legislation.
Mm-hmm.
Can you read that into the record?
Sure. For legislation, little a, moving hydrocodone from a Schedule 3 to a Schedule 2, Baker advised that she knew what was going to take place but could not share the information at this time. DEA was advised that Mallinckrodt was preparing for when the change takes place, not if it does.
Okay. And this is moving hydrocodone from 2 to 3. I'm sorry, from
3 to 2. That's correct.
Okay.
So we were moving forward. So the consideration was that they were going to move hydro from 3 to 2.
Yeah. And that would have triggered additional steps with respect to the manufacture and sale of hydrocodone?
Check the form.
So
Okay.
I don't know to your question, but I'll tell you what it was, which was
Sure.
I had a security concern because now I would have to move product from a cage to a vault. So I was conveying to them that we were taking the steps already to build the space to have the vault if they converted 3s to 2s so that I could have the product safely and securely held. And I was doing proactive on that. So if they had left it as a 3, I would have spent money getting the vault ready and the space ready for this product, and then it wouldn't have gone in there. But once it went to a 2, I was prepared to move.
Understood.
Okay.
And do you have an understanding of why DEA wanted to, or why DEA moved hydrocodone from 3 to 2?
I don't, as we sit here.
Other than this conversation regarding, the steps Mallinckrodt was taking in anticipation of moving 3 to 2. Did you have any other conversations with DEA regarding the movement of hydrocodone from 3 to 2?
I did not.
Do you know if anyone else at Mallinckrodt had those conversations?
I do not.
Do you know what Mallinckrodt's position was in terms of moving hydrocodone from Schedule 3 to Schedule 2?
I do not.
Now, point 5 references organizational changes. And it says DEA was previously advised of the organizational changes within Mallinckrodt security, but a few questions remained. What are the organizational changes that are being referenced there?
Me. So I came in on June. This is my first actual meeting with DEA in Albany.
Okay. And it references a few questions remained. What were those questions?
Yeah, so I think they had a few questions of me, whether there would be any changes at the Hobart facility. And as I go on to explain, no organizational changes that would affect them directly at this point. Their POCs would continue to be Eileen and Rich, and clearly if they had any anything they wanted to discuss, that they could reach out to me.
Okay. Now, it also says from a corporate standpoint, communications would come from Don Lohman. Do you know Don?
Yes.
And they noted a significant increase in communications from Don. Why was there a significant increase in communications from Don?
We were engaged with our anti-diversion efforts, and we kept DEA informed on everything that we were doing.
And was that Don's responsibility to do that?
He took the responsibility as part of the SOM team.
Okay. So, well, I'll strike that. So was there a reason that you were having increasing communications coming from Don as opposed to increasing communications coming from Rich or Eileen? Why have Don be the communicator as opposed to the established POCs, which are Rich and Eileen?
Objection to form.
So I'll answer that question this way, that we were making enhancements to our SOM program. I believe Don had previously communicated the fact that there was a change in the organizational structure, and they noted that there was an increase in communication coming from Don. I don't know what all those communications were, and anything beyond that might be privileged.
Well, were there any concerns with the communications from Rich and Eileen to the DEA?
No.
Were there any concerns with the job that Rich or Eileen, well, strike that, let me separate this. Were there any concerns with Rich's performance?
No.
Did you ever have any concerns with Rich's performance?
Yes.
What were those concerns?
I felt he was spending more time on his other responsibilities, and I wanted him to spend more time on the security.
And what were the other responsibilities that he was spending his time on?
He had responsibility for the facilities personnel and EHS, environmental health and safety issues. And he had a security staff, and he felt that the security staff was handling all the security needs of the facility. And I thought he was wearing too many hats.
Did you ever have any concerns with Eileen's performance?
No.
Do you know if anyone else ever had any concerns with Eileen's performance?
No.
I'll just shoot a short break now so we can have lunch.
Sure.
After the next one.
Okay, that's fine.
You're going off the record at 11:31 a.m. We're back on the record at 11:41 a.m.
Okay. So, Mr. Gillis, I'm handing you what's marked as Exhibit 48. What? I'm sorry, let me give that copy to you, and then this is a copy for your counsel. So this is a prior deposition, prior exhibit from another deposition. It's a Borelli. It's Exhibit 32 to the Borelli deposition, and the Bates number here is MNK-T1 562387. And I'd like to start with the very email on the back. Okay, so this is an email from Miss Heather Goodman to David Irwin. And David Irwin is a Mallinckrodt employee. I believe he was an account manager. And she says, Dave, I spoke with my aunt, and the independent pharmacy she chose is Dane Drugs, 6495 East Broad Street, Columbus, Ohio, 43213, and then she's got the phone number for the pharmacy. Her monthly prescription is 1,500 oxycodone 15 milligrams. We have not contacted the pharmacy to let them know this is happening yet. In addition, as soon as we know that this arrangement is set up, Aunt Sandra will call her doctor and have him call in the script for her. Please let us know how you'd like to proceed. Dave, as I said, I can't tell you how much this means to me. You're doing a really good thing here. I copied my aunt, Sandra Morrow, on this email, so she's in the loop. Okay, so do you see that email, sir?
Yes.
And did I read that accurately?
Yes.
Okay, so to recap, Ms. Goodman is asking Mr. Irwin to send 1,500 oxycodone 15 milligrams or 1,500 of Mallinckrodt's 15 milligram tablets to this pharmacy in Ohio for her aunt. Then the next email that I'd like to direct your attention to is the one on top of Bates number 562389. It's from Kate Mullenkamp to Dave Irwin. Do you see that?
Yes.
And she says, I've spoken with Victor, and he thinks he can make this happen. 2 cases a month to the below pharmacy. He is working on it, and we should have an answer shortly. Thanks, Kate. Did you ever meet, I'm sorry, strike that. I believe you already indicated that you don't know Kate Mullenkamp.
That's correct. I
Okay.
don't.
Do you know Dave Irwin?
I do not.
Okay, what about Victor Borelli?
No.
What about John Adams?
No.
Okay. Then there's another email in the middle of the page on Bates page 562388. So the date is April 10th, 2009, 9:58 a.m. It's from Dave Irwin to Victor Borelli and Kate Mullenkamp. Do you see that?
Yes.
And it says, I'm sure I'll be talking to Heather Goodman later today so I can clarify this. Sure, sorry. But I did the math in my head late yesterday, and this equates to 50 tablets per day. Is that even possible? So, I think, did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. And then the very top email on the first page from Kate to Victor and Dave, CCing John Adams, says, Vic, thank you for all your work on this. I worked with Sarah and we are shipping to KeySource. The order should ship to them on Monday. Thanks, Kate. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so to recap, you have Heather Goodman, who I believe used to work at Cardinal Health, get in touch with Mallinckrodt and essentially ask for, 1,500 oxycodone tablets to be shipped to her aunt to a particular pharmacy in Columbus, Ohio. and Mallinckrodt, presumably working through a distributor, arranged to have the pills shipped to this pharmacy in Ohio. Is that a fair summary of this email chain?
Shipped to the distributor who would get it to the pharmacy.
Yes.
Okay.
So with that correction, is that a fair statement?
I mean, what you read what was contained in this this email chain.
Okay. And the pills did in fact ship according to Kate's email. Is that correct?
It said we are shipping to
Yes.
Key Source. Yes.
Okay. Do you have any concerns with this transaction as a director of security?
I have no idea of any other circumstances around this, so I'm not going to be able to speak to it. I don't know anything else about it. What you read was what the words on these emails said.
Well, do you see anything in this email chain that indicates that Ms. Goodman had any authority to order OxyContin for her aunt?
Again, I don't know what's missing, what other data I don't have to make an informed decision. So I see what's in these emails, but I don't have enough information to make a decision.
Well, if this inquiry had come to you, sir, would you have simply shipped the drugs, or would you have made further inquiries?
So that's a hypothetical, and I'm not going to address that hypothetical. I'm already telling you I need additional information because I don't know what any of this means.
Okay. So what is the additional information you need?
Well, I'm not a doctor. We didn't read all the emails in here. I don't know, was it corrected on whether it is 50 tablets a day? Was there a 0.0 missing here? Was it 2 0.0s missing here? I don't know what the total number actually turned out to be. I'd like to know what that number.
Well, if the total number turned out to be 1,500 oxycodone pills.
Again, I don't know. Over a month, I don't know what the patient's medical condition is. I don't know what the doctor's trying to achieve here. There's a lot of information I don't know, so I'm hesitant to speculate on all the stuff that I don't know with this particular patient.
But you would agree that the 1,500 oxycodone seems like a large amount.
Again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know whether that is a large amount or not.
But it's certainly something you would have inquired about, correct?
I would have asked additional information.
Okay. And this additional information would have included more additional information regarding Aunt Sandra, I take it?
And again, I wouldn't have violated somebody's HIPAA rights and stuff, but I would have wanted to have known more. That whatever could be shared as far as a medical condition or, verifying what the actual number is, and, I would have wanted a lot more information.
Okay. And would you agree that this request, without this additional information, certainly raises at least the potential that there could be diversion?
I don't know that.
But this situation, in your view, certainly warranted additional inquiry?
Yes.
Okay. An additional inquiry beyond what is captured in this email chain, correct?
Yes, and I don't know what other information they had.
Okay. So if this is the only information they had, this email chain is it for this order, then shipping this order would have been of concern to you, would it not?
It's not what I said. My testimony is that I would want additional information.
And in the absence of that information, you would have had concerns about shipping this order, sir?
So I don't know what other additional information they had. I would want additional information.
Well, I understand that, but I guess, let me rephrase my question. If there was no additional information, if they didn't, if no additional information was provided beyond what's captured in this email chain, you would have concerns with shipping this order. Isn't that a fair statement?
Objection. Question's been asked and answered.
So again, that's a hypothetical. I don't know what other information they did have, so I don't want to comment on a hypothetical that may not be accurate. So,
But they certainly should have had more information than what's in this email chain, sir, correct?
Objection. Asked and answered.
I would have asked for more information.
Okay, so this is now Gillies Exhibit 49. Yeah. And so, to provide an explanation for this exhibit, this was used as a prior exhibit in the Borelli deposition. It's Exhibit 11. This is essentially a snapshot of chargeback data that Mallinckrodt has produced to us and that we have used to isolate and focus on a specific distributor and a specific end user. I guess to start with, when I use the term end user, do you know what that means?
No, I'd ask you for clarification.
Okay. So Mallinckrodt has a customer, let's say a distributor, and the distributor's customer is, the customer's customer. Is that terminology you're familiar with?
So the distributor's customer, the pharmacy,
Yes.
would be our customer's customer then, if it was our product going
Yes.
to that pharmacy. Okay,
Exactly.
we're on the same page.
And another way to, I think, describe or refer to a customer's customer could be an end user. Is
Okay.
that a term you've ever heard?
No, but I'll,
Okay.
I can follow you.
What about an indirect customer? Is that a term that you're familiar with? Well, strike that. Let me ask this. How do you refer to your customer's customers?
Downstream registrant.
Downstream registrant? Okay,
Uh-huh.
I will try to use that.
Oh, okay.
So, this is a snapshot of a distributor and a downstream registrant that's receiving Mallinckrodt products. And so you can see from the product description on the second page that this product is oxycodone. So do you see that under the column product description?
Yes.
It's oxycodone, it's oxy 15 and oxy 30s.
Yes.
Then the downstream registrant is Barry Schultz. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, and then it's being sold via First Veterinary Supply, or the Harvard Drug Group doing business as First Veterinary Supply. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with Dr. Schultz?
I'm familiar in preparing for
This deposition.
the one yesterday.
Okay. But you are aware that Mr. Schultz is serving a lengthy prison sentence?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Are you aware of the Harvard Drug Group, Harvard Drug Company?
From preparing my testimony for yesterday,
And so you're aware that they are a distributor that had its license revoked?
I believe I testified that earlier today, yes.
Okay. So the Harvard Drug Group is doing business as a First Veterinary Supply Company. And you have a doctor that is getting oxycodone from the First Veterinary Supply Company. Can you think of any reason for a medical doctor to be getting oxy from a vet supply company?
Objection to form.
So I don't know anything about this or these transactions, but is this a corporate holding company? I mean,
Well, it's doing business as First Veterinary Supply Company, so it's a vet supply company.
Objection to form.
okay, are there other aspects of business that this company does?
Well, I'm not sure. What do you mean by other aspects of business?
Well, you said it was a veterinary supply company. They're a DEA registrant, so the DEA gave them a license to distribute drugs. So maybe my bad. Maybe I misunderstand what you're asking me.
Well, isn't it a red flag that you've got a doctor that's getting oxycodone from a vet supply company?
Objection to form.
So I'm familiar with these transactions. I would want to know what Harvard Drug's corporate entity, this First Veterinary Supply, there's nothing wrong with that corporate entity having Harvard Drug underneath it because the DEA gave them a registration. So DEA would have looked at this prior to them giving the registration. I mean, that's my understanding. So I'm sorry if I'm not answering your question. Maybe I'm still not understanding it. So.
Well, does the DEA give? Well, vets have the ability to prescribe opioid products, correct?
They do.
Okay, and they're also subject to regulation because they're prescribing opioid products.
Correct.
And vet supply companies, strike that. Vet supply companies would have a legitimate business purpose in supplying a vet with, opioids for use in that vet's practice, would they not?
As an aspect of the business, is that the complete business? So again, I'm going to ask, I need a lot more information than what's contained here. So I've got a DEA registrant providing product to a medical doctor who's a DEA registrant, and I don't know the corporate holding company. I don't know what other interest this corporation has. So I would want to know what that is. But I would think that the DEA looked at that because they gave them a registration. So a holding company, I don't see an issue with that.
Are the registrations given to veterinary supply companies different than the registrations given to distributors that distribute to MDs?
So I don't know whether this is one and the same or whether there's different. Again, I'm lacking all the information to make an informed decision on this.
Well, and what additional information would you need specifically?
Well, based on your question, I want to know is this company doing business as First Veterinary Supply, is that the corporate entity with Harvard Drug underneath it? I mean, is Harvard Drug First Veterinary Supply? Are they one and the same? I want to know, are there two different registrations, DEA registrations here? I don't know that. So there's a lot of information that I would want to know. But if Harvard Drug and First Veterinary Supply are one and the same, and the DEA gave them a registration, I don't see an issue with the company, holding company, and that's my term here because I don't know what they are, that the holding company is called First Veterinary Supply.
And do you know if the registration given to vets differs from the registration given to doctors?
I do not know that. I don't know.
Okay. Do you know if the registration given to veterinary supply companies differs from the registration given to pharmacies providing human drugs?
So again, I don't know what their registration says. Is it for human drugs and veterinarian? Is it just human drugs? I don't know. So if that's a corporate holding name, I don't think there's a big deal with that, because DEA certainly didn't give it any concern when they gave Harvard Drug the registration.
Well, but the fact that you are shipping product to someone that has DEA registration isn't sufficient to comply with your requirements under the Controlled Substances Act, is it, sir?
Sure it is.
So the only thing you need to worry about is whether or not the person you're shipping to has a DEA registration. So long as they have a DEA registration, nothing else matters? Is that?
No, that's not my testimony. That's not what I said. But what I'm telling you is, one of the things we're going to verify is whether there's a legitimate DEA registration. And then under our SOM program and stuff, we're going to run, for each order that comes to us, we'll run our algorithm and see if there's anything that hits our peculiar / unusual order report. So I mean, there's other steps that we take in our anti-diversion efforts. So again, I apologize. I understand your question to be, do I have a problem with this company name, DBA First Veterinary Supply, supplying to this doctor? And I don't, if the DEA has given them, whether Harvard Drug and the veterinary supply are the same, one and the same, and the DEA registration, I mean, we'll know that in our due diligence with Harvard Drug. So I don't see a problem with that corporate name, as long as we verified the other things.
Do you know if vets prescribe Oxy?
I believe they do.
And what is that based on, sir?
It's on my belief that I had read somewhere at some time that there are Oxy products given to veterinarians.
Okay. If it turns out that oxycodone is not prescribed by vets,
Okay.
it's a human drug, would that cause concerns?
Objection form.
In this instance?
Well, in this instance or as a general matter?
Oh, okay. So we're off at this. Is just a general question.
Well, the general question is, you have a medical doctor that is ordering oxycodone from a veterinary supply company. Doesn't that raise concerns for you?
Objection form.
All right. So I'm just going to go back to, I need more information then.
Okay. So
Is this only a veterinary supply company, or is it Harvard Drug, the distributor? So the name in and of itself for a corporation does not cause me any concern.
But this is all information you would have sought from Harvard Drug before continuing to ship them product, correct?
Based on your questioning, I would want additional information. Based on your line of questioning, I would want additional information on whether Harvard Drug only supplies to veterinarians, then, we would go from there.
And if Mallinckrodt didn't go out and get this additional information, you would agree that's a problem, isn't it, sir?
Objection to form.
So that's a hypothetical. I don't know what information Mallinckrodt has in these transactions that would or would not have raised any other issues.
Well, but sir, my question to you is, you've indicated that these are all circumstances in which you would have gone out and gathered additional information.
Based on your line of questioning,
Based on the line of questioning.
I would want additional information. And
Yes.
then I just answered this last question, which was, I don't know whether Mallinckrodt has that information or not.
I understand that.
Okay,
And
okay.
what I'm saying to you is, if Mallinckrodt in fact does not have that information, because they did not go out to gather it, isn't that a cause of concern?
And
Objection to form.
as I just stated, that's a hypothetical. I don't know whether they do or they don't, and then the hypothetical comes after that. If they don't, then what? So I would tell you that I would want additional information based on your line of questioning.
So actually, keep this exhibit up.
Okay.
So here we go. So this is exhibit 50. And I'm going to raise to you, Andrew. And I'll put it up.
Thank you very much.
Put it up on the screen. This is essentially the same, a similar spreadsheet to what I just showed you. My apologies that this one has small paper and
No,
the other one
you're
had
good.
bigger
Yeah,
ones.
I appreciate you putting it up there.
And so now the thing I wanted to flag about this spreadsheet, and well, let me first get it into the record. So this was previously used in another deposition. It's Exhibit 10 to the Borelli deposition, and it's an excerpt of the chargeback data focusing on distributor and downstream registrant, the same downstream registrant, which would be Mr. Schultz. So do you see the ship to customer name?
I do.
So the downstream registrant is Dr. Schultz again. Do you see the product description, which is Oxy 15 and Oxy 30?
Yes.
Okay, and then this time the distributor is Sunrise Wholesale. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. So this is Exhibit 50. The other one was Exhibit 49. They indicate that Dr. Schultz is going out and gathering Oxy 15 and Oxy 30 from two different distributors. Is it of concern to you when a downstream registrant is gathering product from multiple distributors?
Objection to form.
The fact that you get product from multiple distributors doesn't make it wrong, but it would be something that I would look at.
Okay. And why would you look at that?
I'd want to see the volume of product going to that downstream registrant. To ensure that we had a full handle on what was occurring. So the fact that there's multiple distributors doesn't necessarily make it a problem, but it would be a pointer for me to do further research.
Yeah. And part of the reason you'd want to do further research is that this could be a potential effort to get around screens on, or, well, to get around the potential limits on product. Isn't it true? Isn't that one possibility?
Objection to form.
I don't know that in this situation, but certainly it would be something that I would be looking for.
Okay. So Andrew, do you want to break for lunch now?
Sure.
It's 12,
Sound good?
it's 12:11. Okay.
Yep.
So why don't we do that?
We are going off the record at 12:10.